Your board's cyber risk assumptions have a shelf life now. It is measured in months. That is not a vendor pitch. 5 allied intelligence agencies signed it, and one of them is ours. They told directors that having controls is no longer the test. Resilience has to work under pressure and be shown to. When did your board last test what it claims works?
Let's get into it.
5 agencies signed one statement, and it handed every board a shelf life measured in months. This is the Hamberger Report. I'm Andreas Hamberger, Enterprise Architect and Board Director, Wellington. What follows is the governance instruction sitting inside that statement. On the 22nd of June 2026, the heads of 5 allied cyber intelligence agencies put their names to a single public statement: the United States Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the United Kingdom National Cybersecurity Centre, the Australian Signals Directorate, the Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, and New Zealand's own Government Communications Security Bureau. It was published the same day, word for word, on all 5 agency websites. The title told boards it was written for them, the AI shift in cyber risk, why leaders must act now. These are the agencies of the 5-country council, the allied partnership known internationally as the 5 Eyes. They do not co-sign public documents often, and when they do, the document is normally addressed to network defenders, the people who run the firewalls and read the logs. This one is addressed to directors. That single change of audience is the story, and it is why this episode exists. The line that carries the whole statement is its assessment of time. Cyber risk assumptions, the agencies wrote, can become outdated in months, not years. Read that as a governance instruction rather than a threat bulletin. The agencies were specific about why the timeline has compressed, and the mechanism matters more than the phrase. Their core assessment is dual use. The same capabilities that strengthen cyber defense, they warn, could also let malicious actors run operations more quickly, at lower cost, and at larger scale. Attack and defense are being changed by the same technology, but they are not being changed evenly. An attacker needs one way in. A defender has to hold every door at once. When the tooling that finds the doors gets faster and cheaper, the site that needs a single opening gains more than the site that must cover them all. The concrete change is speed. Finding a weakness and building something that exploits it used to run in weeks or months. AI presses that work towards hours. New Zealand's own companion guidance, published 4 days before the joint statement, gives the compression a name: the vulnerability storm that AI-assisted attackers can generate against an organization carrying old systems and thin security hygiene. Note the tense the agencies chose. Note will have, is already having. If you want to see what this advisory means in a boardroom rather than a briefing, look at Marks & Spencer. The entry point was not a 0 day. It was not exotic malware. It was a telephone call. The retailer was compromised in April 2025 by the group known as Scattered Spider. An attacker telephoned a third-party service desk, impersonated an employee, and had a password reset. From there, the attackers reached the Windows domain controller and took the file holding the password hashes for every user in the domain. Ransomware followed. Online sales stopped for the better part of a week. The numbers are the part of board feels. The suspension cost roughly £3.8 million a day in lost online revenue, on the order of $8 million New Zealand dollars a day. More than £500 million came off the market value. And the detail that should stay with every director is the timing at the top. The compromise landed on the 17th of April. Leadership did not know until the 19th, 2 days. One note before we go further. This Friday, the 21st of August, Lethal by Design reaches its 9th and final episode, closing the series on accountability in military AI. If that gap is your problem too, that is the one to watch. The advisory is unusual because it does not stop at describing the threat. It gives directors 3 directions and beneath them 5 practical actions. None of the 5 is new to a security team. What is new is who signed them. Cyber risk can no longer be treated as a purely technical issue. The agencies wrote, "This is a core business risk and leadership responsibility. The second direction tells organizations to give their cyber leaders real authority and real resources, not a title without a budget. The third belongs in the minutes of your next meeting. Boards and executives should ensure cyber resilience is in place and works under pressure. It is not enough to have controls. That sentence is the audit of intent expressed in intelligence agency language. The question it forces is not whether a policy exists. It is whether that policy would survive contact with a real incident. A tabletop exercise nobody has run. An incident response plan that lives in a shared drive. A backup regime nobody has tried to restore from. Each of those is a control that exists and has never been shown to work under pressure. The 5 actions underneath say the same thing operationally. Reduce the attack surface. Patch what is known to be exploited. Isolate legacy systems. Strengthen identity and access management. And test the response before you need it. The 5-country council statement is not, in origin, a commercial governance document. It is a product of the Allied signals and cyber intelligence architecture, and that origin changes how a board should read what it says. In New Zealand, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada, the National Cyber Agency sits inside the Signals Intelligence Service itself. Our National Cybersecurity Centre is a function of the Government Communications Security Bureau. The British Centre sits within GCHQ, the Australian within the Australian Signals Directorate, the Canadian within the Communications Security Establishment. When those services jointly assess that a threat has crossed out of the state domain and into the civilian economy, they are applying the analytical frame they normally reserve for state-sponsored operations. For New Zealand, the implication is direct. Every sector this country depends on, energy, water, finance, health, logistics, sits behind the same legacy-rich, identity-weak perimeter the advisory describes. Sovereign resilience is not held by the agencies alone. In practice, it is held by several thousand boards. A board that acts on this statement is meeting its own duty of care and at the same time strengthening the national resilience those services exist to defend. That is what New Zealand organizations need to understand, and it is the reason the audience of this document changed. It would be a mistake to read this as something that happened overseas with a local angle bolted on afterwards. Our own agency is a named co-author, and it published its domestic guidance first. On the 18th of June 2026, 4 days before the joint statement, our National Cybersecurity Centre published its own guidance on frontier AI vulnerabilities. It did not wait for the joint statement. The same week, it recorded 1,164 incidents for the quarter and 5.6 million New Zealand dollars in direct losses, up 76%. Volume and cost rose while technical sophistication did not. And this country already has a case on file. In May 2026, the Privacy Commissioner issued compliance notices over a health information breach spanning 99,416 patients. I described that finding as the regulator stated it. No monitoring of unusually large-scale access. No multi-factor authentication. One organization trusting another's assurances without verifying them. Roughly 91% of those patients were in Northland, many of them likely Maori. The people most exposed sit in exactly the legacy-rich systems, the advisory names. Maori data sovereignty is load-bearing here, as a structural observation and not a cultural one. There is a fiduciary edge to this that a New Zealand director cannot wave away, and it has almost nothing to do with technology. It has to do with what the record will show you did after you were warned. Under the Companies Act, a director must show the care, diligence, and skill of a reasonable director. Set that beside a signed statement from this country's own intelligence community telling boards that AI cyber risk is theirs. That is an analytical observation, not a legal opinion. The advisory is now part of the record against which conduct gets measured. The regulatory floor is rising. The Reserve Bank's operational resilience standard, out for consultation, would make boards own a documented disruption tolerance. A mandatory critical infrastructure regime has been consulted on, not enacted. I make no prediction about it. A 12-month review cycle, against a threat that moves in months, leaves a window where your board runs on assumptions it has never tested, and that window widens while you wait. So the exercise for your next meeting is 3 questions answered with evidence, not assurance. When did this board last review its AI cyber risk posture? Can we show resilience works under pressure, or only that controls exist on paper? And if someone asked what this board did after 5 agencies wrote to it, what could we produce?
That is the Hamberger report for today. If this was useful, subscribe and hit the like button. It helps more professionals find the channel. You will find links to everything we covered in the description below. I am Andreas Hamberger, and I will see you tomorrow.
Like and subscribe.